Greetings, book lovers everywhere, and welcome to E-Train Talks! I'm E-Train, a 12-year-old literacy advocate, podcast host, and booktuber, and today's interview is such a special one because, wow. The author I'm talking with today spreads kindness and generosity in the world, and just recently she introduced us to an incredible new book hero, a Hawaiian heroine, LEI, who's teaching us how to be strong. And she's not only strong, but courageous and fierce, and she goes on pretty much the most epic adventure I've really ever read in middle grade. So, who am I talking about? Which middle grade author am I going to be talking to? Well, she's the debut author of LEI the Fire Goddess, a book that Kirkus Reviews describes as an exhilarating, adventure-filled celebration of Hawaiian culture. And not to mention, LEI the Fire Goddess was also the Week Junior Kids June Book Club pick. That's a mouthful. If you've not figured it out already, I'm speaking with the wonderful author, Malia Maunakea. Thank you so much for joining me today, Malia. It's a true honor.
Thanks for having me. This is awesome.
Thank you. So, I am incredibly grateful that you took time out of your day to come on E-Train Talks. You are doing so much good in the world through your writing, but also through your Books for Maui auction, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. So, to start off, we're actually going to be diving right into it. So, later was just 2 seconds. So, you were helping lead the change for the fundraiser Books for Maui, which raised money for the victims of the Maui fire just recently. So, how did the idea come about, and how did you get the authors to auction off individual visits? And how much money did you raise?
This was really a collaborative effort. There are 7 of us women behind the scenes, all of Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander heritage that came together. We Joanna Ho, actually, of Eyes That Kiss in the Corners, reached out to a bunch of us on Twitter, and we had been kind of all mulling over what are we going to do, how are we going to help on our own, and she was kind of the glue that binds and brought us all together to be like, okay, if we're going to do this, it's going to help to do it together. So we all formed a team, had a lot of texts going on behind the scenes, but I'm sure, as you've known, the book community is an amazingly generous, wonderful community. So once we put the word out there, Maui holds a very special place in a lot of people's hearts. Many people have gone to visit or know of somebody who has been impacted. So it was lovely being able to tap into that desire to help that was already out there and give them a way to funnel that energy.
Well, the work that you did to help Maui truly impacted so many lives, and it's going to impact even more. So, how much did you raise, all in all?
We are just about to the end of counting, and it looks like with the incredibly generous donation from Scholastic of $25,000, we
Wow.
are at the $208,000 mark.
Well, we've got to give a round of applause for that. Wow.
It's pretty exciting. It's really great how everybody came together. We're just thrilled.
Absolutely. Like you said, the book community is just so amazing. There's so many kind people in it, and I'm so, I guess, proud to see the book community all band together for such an important cause. So, and like,
Absolutely.
hats off to you and the other 6 women who worked on this, who brought everybody together, who created this important fundraiser. Like, pretty much a few days after the impact of the fire, after it ended. So, my next question for you is something that I discovered while doing research for you. So, I read that you actually have ADHD. So, do you find that ADHD leads to a bit of a different writing process for you than other authors that you might meet?
This is an interesting question because I've always had ADHD, so I'm not really sure like what it would be like without it.
Mhm.
Um the closest I can come to understanding is based on feedback from other writers who are sometimes surprised with how many things I have going on at one time, or how many things I choose to juggle in a day. So I think that yes, it is a little bit different. I think, as you can see up here, I have like the
Oh,
lovely planning board that is now blank because I'm in the middle of revisions and not outlining right now. But that is an example of what one of my mentors, Alan Gratz, showed me how to like plot books. I can usually get through about maybe 30 to 60% of plotting before I'm just like, okay, I'm just going to start writing. So it's a little tricky to keep things straight, and it can be really exciting to come up with new projects, but it can be incredibly difficult to get to completion. And
right.
I find it very challenging to continually do edits, because at that point I really want to move on to the next fun, shiny, exciting idea. So it's hard, but I've heard other authors struggle with that as well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I am very fidgety and find it very hard to stay on task.
Well, it's so cool to hear another person has like the same struggles when it comes to finishing a book as I do. I've got like 2 chapters in, of I guess a little bit of plotting, but mainly pantsing, and then poof, I'm on to the next shiny object, like you said. So
Yeah.
it's inspiring to see that somebody with the same kind of struggles got to the finish line. So gonna keep working on writing.
And I'm not medicated, like I hear it is an amazing helper for some folks. I've just never taken the time to like figure that process out. So I just go and wing it. But yeah, it is possible. You can do it. You have to really, really want to.
Right. So my next question for you is, well, this is another thing that I discovered while researching. I've got to dig deep for these interviews. I research a
You
lot.
did a good job. I was very excited to read
Oh,
your questions.
thank you. So I read that you're a mixture of Hawaiian, Polish, Chinese, English, Irish, French, Scottish, German, and Spanish. I mean, that is just, I guess, crazy, mental, because you would think that just being born in a place like Hawaii, there's so many people who have lived there for generations that there wouldn't be that much, I guess, cultural or country diversity inside of you. So I'm just really curious, is there a story behind your diverse heritage?
So my mom is from Buffalo, New York, or
Okay.
upstate New York, and she is pure Polish.
Hmm.
So that is one half of me. The other half is everything else. My dad is just over half Hawaiian, and then, as he sometimes puts it, everybody who jumped ship. So Hawaii has a lot of sailors coming from around the world, or
Right.
plantation workers. It was a gathering space for people from all walks of life, and people from all walks of life found other people interesting and came together to make me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually not that uncommon in Hawaii, that you're this mixed plate of all sorts of interesting backgrounds, and it's what makes Hawaii so interesting to be in, because um it's more about the individual person and less about the ethnicity.
Hmm.
So it's fun.
Yeah. It does sound like a lot of fun, and it makes a lot of sense. So now let's dive into talking about your amazing debut middle grade novel, Lei and the Fire Goddess. Goddess. For the for a first book, I've gotta say, you really brought out all the adventure and fantasy stops. I I would compare it to the highest of fantasy in my book. Like probably up there in the top 5. It's just chef's kiss amazing. So I know that you're going to dive a little bit more into the book, but what I can share without spoiling anything, and also spoiling your answer, is that you were inspired, your epic debut story was inspired by your son's love of Rick Riordan's Percy Jackson series. And that also kind of inspired my love of fiction adventure as well. So, without giving away any spoilers, will you share more into why, and I guess how, the Percy Jackson saga motivated you to write, and I guess how it intertwined into your writing? And can you share a peek into the world of Leia and the Fire Goddess to everyone to everyone who's tuning in?
Yeah, so can I share a little secret with you?
Mhm.
You know, the whole ADHD thing and
Yeah.
how sometimes it's hard to finish things? I never actually finished Percy and the Fire Goddess, Percy Jackson and the Fire Goddess, or Percy Jackson and the things. I've
Yeah.
never finished Percy Jackson.
Ah.
Um, yeah. So I read the first few chapters and I tried watching the movie with my son. But I don't know, he had already seen it. And so we never got through it like the third time. But he read it and he read it and he read it and he kept loving it. And he's read every single Rick Riordan book ever under the sun and talks about him constantly. So I felt like I had a pretty good understanding of what was going on. I did, when doing research, so basically came up with the idea like, okay, my son absolutely loves this guy. I got a good idea of what's going on. I know the basic synopsis and storyline of what's happening. Um, so I went to my librarians and asked, hey, are there any other books other than Greek stories um, that follow this kind of storyline? She's like, "Oh, well, yeah, he has an entire Rick Riordan Presents." And she showed me Aru Shah. And that book I read from cover to cover because that I thought was fabulous. Um, Oddly enough, I read it after I had drafted
Oh.
LEI, so I'm really glad that there wasn't a Hawaiian one already out there. Um, but then I got really nervous because she had the bird Boo in there, and I was like, oh my goodness, that's just like my side character. And what if people think I copied? And it was the whole thing. Thankfully, nobody thinks that I've copied her, and she writes amazing stories anyways. So that is my secret. I've never actually finished Percy Jackson. I'm sure it is wonderful. Um, Obviously, it's a huge hit with everybody. I just know the gist of it.
Mhm.
For LEI, I wanted just a big adventure. And I started writing with plot in mind and with the understanding of this thing happens and she has to solve it, and she goes on this journey in the middle, which I later learned was called the hero's journey. Very traditional, like book writing, book
Yeah.
planning. And I learned a lot about character development along the way and with my mentors. So the book changed immensely from its original conception to what you read now.
So, I'm hoping to see more Hawaiian mythology come from Leia and the Fire Goddess. And I think that you're really going to inspire a new wave of writers.
It's exciting. I mentioned the 7 women that I've been working with for books for Maui. Shar Tuiasoa has Punky Aloha. That's a picture book that's already out. And she's working on another picture book right now. And within that group, there's Keala Kendall, who's an incredible like YA Hawaiian Kanaka author. And Kealani has another picture book coming out next year. So there are a lot of Hawaiian and Polynesian stories that are finally getting championed. So in the next couple of years, we're going to see great things. And Megan Kakimoto's book just came out, Every Drop is a Man's Nightmare. Like, it's really nifty to see that our bookshelves are going to have more representation soon.
So, I know that you were born and raised in Hawaii, and you grew up hearing lots of Hawaiian stories and legends just like Lei. So, I'm
Mhm.
curious to know if you included anything from these tales you grew up with in Lei's story. And did you have to do much research to write this book, as you had pretty much heard a lot of these tales in your own childhood?
So for the first for LEI and the Fire Goddess, I based it, the kernel of interestingness that I had was from a story I had first heard in 4th grade. And my teacher, Mr. Koochi, who I thank in acknowledgements, taught me about this story here.
Oh, wow.
And it's all about Pele and Poliahu's race down Mauna Kea.
Oh, yeah.
And Poliahu is the snow goddess up on Mauna Kea. And they do this like massive sled race down the mountain. So I include a bit of that story along with a few others of, for example, Kamapua'a in my book. I allude to the stories that were already in existence, including, well, I'm not going to share that, but I allude to stories that are already in existence. But what I did need to research, I wanted to be accurate in terms of where lava flows happened, where eruptions happened, and where sled races might have happened. He'e holua. There were holua courses. Some of them are still visible, including one on the Kona side of the island, which is where I pulled some scenes in the book from. So I wanted to be as accurate as possible in retelling these historic areas. So I called the Hawaii National Parks, and I talked to a lot of their rangers who are familiar with those activities. And I also talked to Mr. Tom Pohaku Stone, who has sort of single-handedly brought back the holua tradition of sled racing. And he makes them and he takes them to schools, and kids go sledding down grassy slopes now. So I was able to pick his brain on exactly how these sleds are created and how fast they go and all that kind of stuff. So that was the research I did. I wanted those particulars to be accurate.
I never really thought about the fact that, well, I mean, I guess when you read the book, you know that there's certain facts and figures that aren't necessarily something that you would find directly in mythology. So I guess it makes sense that now that you had to really do some more research that you couldn't necessarily find in the stories themselves, rather from people, I guess, around the stories. So it's cool that you added like some real elements, facts and figures about sleds and that kind of stuff, but also really it stayed true to your traditions.
And it was fun researching, for example, if you look at the cover of the book behind you or next to you, you can see there's a bat on the cover, and there are lehua, and there are some other trees. I wanted the illustrators, KAA Illustration, amazing, and they helped me make sure that we tried to represent the endemic species in Hawaii, so plants and animals that are only found in Hawaii. That was why LEI's sidekick ended up being a bat, because I wanted it to be an endemic mammal. And it turns out there are only 2 endemic mammals. One is the Hawaiian monk seal, and one is a bat. I was like, well, the monk seal can't really go on this adventure, so it's gonna be a bat.
So what's next? Will we have the chance to follow LEI on another epic journey, or are you planning to move your writing into different directions?
You are going to get to go on another fun ride with LEI and friends next summer. Yes, I am working very hard on revising LEI 2 right now. And I am not sure how much I can say, but it's going to be amazing. And she's going to go on a little bit of travel.
Ooh. That is beyond exciting. That is the news that I wanted to hear in this interview. Woo! I cannot.
So it'll come out June 4th.
So less than a year from now. That's going to be marked on my calendar.
Yes.
Here. And it's my last day of school.
It's going to be very fast.
So it's
that's easy then.
Yeah, it's my last day of school, and when I get home from school early, because it always ends early, it's going to be at my doorstep. I can already picture it.
There you go.
And I'm just going to be
Yes.
in my bed reading LEI 2. There, it's all
And just
set.
wait till you see the cover. I'm hoping I'll be able to like show the cover and everything a little later this month, September. I'm
Woo.
not sure when this is going live, but yeah, it should be up pretty soon and you'll get to see all the fun.
Yeah. Well, I cannot wait, and this will be out in September everybody is just probably already seeing this in September. So it's so weird
Perfect.
yeah, perfect.
Right? All the
Yeah.
lining up of things.
Like you say everything is in the past and then it's out in the future and they're like, why are they talking about the past?
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Time
So,
is all just a suggestion, really.
right, exactly. I mean, time is relative, so.
Mm-hmm.
So my next question for you is about your very, very exciting trip to Hawaii to visit Title I schools and share LEI's story with over, drumroll please, 2,700 kids. That is absolutely amazing. So incredible.
It is bonkers. Yeah.
It is. So will you share how this book trip came about and where you're going to be going to throughout Hawaii?
So it's all just amazing. Like the stars completely aligned. This is
Right.
meant to be somehow. It was foretold. No, I had a dream that I wanted to go back. Like this is my ultimate goal was to go back and talk to kids back there because this is who I wrote the book for, is so they could like see themselves in it, right? Along with helping everybody else
Yeah.
have a picture of what Hawaii life is like. Like it's great because everybody kind of wins. So I really wanted to get back home, but it's expensive to go back to Hawaii and it's expensive to travel around and to go to all the islands and stuff. So I was trying to think up a way of how I could make it happen out. And I was working with one of my aunties over there trying to figure out if we could find some money over here. And then I got an email from We Need Diverse Books saying, hey, they're partnering up with writers and artists across the country and looking for authors who might be willing to go speak to like one of these 7 schools that were all across the country, but one of them happened to be on Maui,
Oh,
in
wow.
Kahului, Maui. I was like, well, yeah, and they were looking for native speakers to go speak to those students. I was like, yes, I mean, I'm not close to there at all, but I would absolutely love to take
right?
you up on that offer. I am trying to put a bigger school tour together right now, but that would be super. And my friend Kealani, who is also one of the 7 ladies that I'm working on books for Maui, she sent me the email too. So it was like multiple times on my desk that I was, okay, I need to reach out to these people just to see if we can make something happen. Lots of back and forth, lots of planning and moving parts. But ultimately, they were able to say, yes, our people are giving this a go. We are going to send you there. We are going to try to raise the funds. We have a link to ask for donations to help sponsor this thing. But you're going to Hawaii. So hurry up and call the schools and figure it out. So I started over the summer trying to reach out to all of the Title I schools because I figured they were the ones. I went to Title I schools for elementary before getting into Kamehameha. They were the kids that I identified with in elementary school. They were the kids that I wanted to reach to give the books to if possible. So the fact that writers and artists across the country provide books to these students is the most unreal thing, in my opinion. Like that all these kids are going to get a brand new book. That is so cool. So yeah, we just worked on coordinating and I have 17 schools on Hawaii Island, Maui, Oahu, Molokai, and Kauai that I will be going to visit. And I could not be more excited.
My next question for you is something that I bet a lot of people do not know. So I bet that not everyone knows that you had another book out in early 2023 your backpacking guide titled Backpacking with Children: How to Go Lightweight,
Yes.
Have Fun, and Stay Safe on the Trail. So, what inspired you to write it, and are you a big hiker yourself?
So this was the first book that I wrote, oddly, kind of. Well, I wrote it in conjunction. When you write
Okay.
a nonfiction book, you sell it on proposal.
Mhm.
So I wrote the first couple chapters, and then I had an outline that I sent out to a bunch of publishers. And while I was waiting to hear back on if anybody was going to take it, I started to write lay
Mhm.
because I'm antsy, ADHD, and I couldn't just like wait. So I started writing the next book. I actually started writing chapter books, and they all got denied or rejected. So
Mhm.
then I wrote lay. Um, so this book I thought would be the way to start because it was based on things that I knew. I do go backpacking a lot more, or I used to do it a lot more than now. I've backpacked probably 3,000 more miles, over 3,000 miles, because I did the Pacific Crest Trail, which is from
Mm.
Mexico
Yeah.
to Canada all in one swoop, and that's like 2,600 miles. Once you've done that, it's really easy to get to
Yeah.
3,000. So now I take our kids, and my kids probably have 700 miles or so under their belts. And I wrote a book about that experience because at the time of writing this, a lot of our friends didn't understand how we could take kids out
Yeah.
backpacking.
Yeah.
So I figured why not write a how to help more families get out into the backcountry with their children.
And that it's really an important read, not just to kind of inspire people to get out backpacking, but also people have that inspiration already, but they have no idea how to do it and how to specifically get their kids out, like you said. So it's a really important book, and I think it's a really great pairing between the backpacking guide and Land the Fire Goddess. And I guess speaking of to that, do you I guess it's probably a really tough question for you, but do you prefer nonfiction or fiction, or or what are the reasons behind maybe oh, for this reason I like nonfiction more, but for this reason I like fiction? I guess that's a long-winded
It's
question.
actually a really easy question. I don't like nonfiction. I like fiction. Um, in writing this backpacking with children book, there was so much more research to be done,
Yeah,
and
true.
it ended up feeling more like a book report in school. And I was reminded why I didn't really like book reports in school. So I would much prefer to write fiction and just go on fun adventures in my mind
Yeah.
and dream up wacky, wild things for imaginary people to do and say rather than having to find like resources and bibliographies and quotations for
Mhm,
sure.
for sure. And I bet you're thinking in your head, so that's why I didn't like book reports.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So if there are any people in school listening to this right now that are struggling in their English classes, have faith. If you like writing, your English class is not an indicator of whether or not you could be an author. I was never good at English class. I did not like all the assigned reading books. I was
Mm.
much better at math and science. Don't worry about it. Your options are still wide open. Just listen to the teacher and try to do this stuff, but don't sweat it if it's not your
Yeah,
easiest class.
your forte, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that I mean, this is of course there are some books that I like for assigned reading, but I feel like assigned reading really kind of takes away from a kid's love of reading because it's no fun to be forced to read a certain book. Like if your teacher's just telling you, "Oh, you have to read The Hobbit. Oh, you have to read James and the Giant Peach," which I'm not calling those bad books. I'm just those are just
Right.
examples. Um,
Right. And then like you have to find the theme of those books and you
yeah.
have to find the all that. Oh my
Mhm.
goodness, I disliked it very strongly.
Yeah, it's just like when
I just wanted to read for fun.
exactly. And it's like when a teacher puts on a movie in class and then they say, "Oh yeah, take notes about this movie."
Yeah,
Mhm.
it that hurt. I understand the reasoning behind it. I get it now, and
Yeah,
I wish that I paid a little bit more attention because understanding themes and character arcs would definitely come in handy.
right.
But it's not the end all be all if you don't get it your first time around.
True. So now it's time for the final question of the interview, the question I've asked every person I've ever interviewed. If you could be or meet any literary character, you could meet your favorite author, or it could be your favorite book character or character from mythological stories, in your case, maybe. So, out of all of those, who would you want to meet or who would you want to be and why?
I am awful at these kind of questions, but
Me too.
because I can't like remember who all my options are. I
Right.
don't know if other people have like a favorite or something, but for me, as soon as I read a book and put it aside, it's like boom, gone out of my head, and I can't
Definitely.
recall like
Yeah.
books I read last week. So that's really hard for me. So I did a quick like Google search of literary characters because I was like, who have I read?
Yeah.
I looked at these books here and I'm like, I don't know, maybe. And I came up with Charlie from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory because he was such a nice kid. Like
Right.
he was
Yeah.
just genuinely a nice human being. I don't think I'd get any surprises if I met him. And also now he has a chocolate factory and I really
Yeah.
like Willy Wonka candies. Those are like the everlasting gobstoppers were my favorite until gummy bears. So yeah, I would vote a kid with a candy factory and a heart of gold. That sounded pretty
Yeah.
good.
I mean, yeah, I would totally agree. And plus, you meet a nice kid, but also, they have a chocolate factory. No biggie. Like,
Bonus.
yeah.
Huge bonus. And like that flying thing that
Yeah.
they went in at the end, like
Yeah.
that sounds like so much fun. Yes, I'm in.
And if you're friends with them, you could basically get unlimited chocolate. Who doesn't want
Yes,
that?
right? Yeah. I'm very practical. That sounded like a winner
Yeah. And plus, you get to hear the Oompa Loompas with their really cool songs.
all the time. It would be magical.
It would be. So, this has been such a great talk. Thank you again for joining me, Malia, and for sharing such warm and thoughtful answers. And I'm so glad you could just join us on E-Train Talks and share your story. You're not just an incredible author, but you're also an incredible literacy advocate. You're advocating for those kids in Hawaii, but also just in general through your Books for Maui fundraiser. And I feel like people are literacy advocates, not just like but because it's just by being authors, because you're giving your story, you're giving hope to kids through your stories. So, what you do is so, so phenomenal, so inspiring. Thank you for everything that you do and for joining me on E-Train Talks.
Thank you so much for having me.